Well, responding to the resignation of Tim Davie, the Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy has said, "I want to thank Tim Davie for his service to public service broadcasting over many years." She says, "We will support the board as it manages this transition, and we will ensure that the Charter Review is the catalyst that helps the BBC to adapt to this new era and secures its role at the heart of national life for decades to come." So that's the Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy. They're responding to this story. Well, with me now is our culture reporter Noor Nanji and our political correspondent Helen Catt. Thanks for both coming in. Noor, we've been talking to you quite a while, but Helen, just wouldn't mind if I can ask you first of all what the political reaction has been so far.
Well, it's been coming in thick and fast this evening. You obviously had the statement there from the Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy. Interestingly, she has had her public run-ins with Tim Davie, the Director General, certainly over the time that she has been in office and that he has been in office. But there you saw that statement thanking him for what she said was his service. But there was that one thing she said in there about the BBC adapting to a new era. And the thing that is linking all of the political reaction this evening is an idea that this needs to be a moment of change for the BBC. So from the Liberal Democrats, for example, they say the BBC isn't perfect, but say it remains one of the few institutions standing between our British values and a populist Trump-style takeover of our politics. As a public service broadcaster, the BBC's role is vital in ensuring our democracy is based on facts, scrutiny and accountability. The Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch had said it was right that Tim Davie and Deborah Turness had finally taken responsibility and resigned from the BBC. But, she said, let's be honest, this has been a catalogue of serious failures that runs far deeper. She talks about the new leadership having to now deliver genuine reform of the culture of the BBC top to bottom, because she said it should not expect the public to keep funding it through a compulsory licence fee unless it can finally demonstrate true impartiality. And that idea of needing the confidence of licence fee payers is also picked up by the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, who said the government needed to appoint somebody with a record of coming in and turning companies and their cultures around. Preferably, it will be someone coming in from the private sector. He said this is the BBC's last chance. If they don't get this right, there will be vast numbers of people refusing to pay the licence fee. So across the spectrum there, you can see them talking about the need for reform, they're talking about the need for change. But I think what you can also get a bit of a flavour of there from those differing statements is there may not be agreement on exactly how the BBC needs to change.
And Noor, if I can bring you in on that, it is a big task and also it's a big beast, so change may not happen all that quickly.
No, exactly. And as Helen was saying, I mean, it's a sensitive time for the BBC heading into those discussions over the charter renewal and change, you know, in such a big organisation. It can take some time. I mean, both Tim Davie and Deborah Turness in their statements today said that they will be working together with the board and Samir Shah to discuss who's going to replace them. Of course, these are two of the most high-profile roles in British media. The Director General role is one of the most high-profile roles in global media as well. So to have someone come in and replace him at a time like this, you know, isn't easy. But at the same time, clearly, as some of the political statements we were hearing there earlier might also reflect, it could be that they felt this was a good time to turn a leaf, to start afresh. There have been clearly a long set of challenges under Tim Davie's tenureship, and also that has not gone away. This week we've seen, of course, more of that. And so it could have been that they felt they got to a point where something had to change and they could do with someone new at this point when they're heading into that really crucial time. And
this is a breaking news for a moment, so if people are just joining us, remind us what was the catalyst for these resignations and what elements fed into it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is a hugely significant moment. It's hard to overstate how important this is in terms of the BBC, its future, where it goes from here. Both the Director General, Tim Davie, and the CEO of News, Deborah Turness, both resigning today, and we hear that from the chair of the BBC, Samir Shah, in the statement just a few hours ago. Now, it does appear that the catalyst for all of this has been that Panorama documentary, that row over that Panorama documentary, which was triggered when the Telegraph reported on Tuesday that there were these concerns that it had been edited in a misleading way. And we know that there had been days of coverage since then, not just in the Telegraph and in a lot of the newspapers, including over the weekend about that, and indeed yesterday the White House as well commenting via the Telegraph, accusing the BBC of dishonesty in the way that that programme was edited. So it didn't look like those questions were going away. But I also think we should see this in context. There has been a long line of issues. This, of course, the most recent one, the one that's been very much front and centre for days now, as I say, but there's been a number of challenges this year alone, including in the summer over the BBC's Glastonbury coverage and its decision to live stream that controversial set by Bob Vylan. There was also the BBC's Gaza documentary, which Ofcom later ruled did seriously breach broadcasting rules. Now you have, of course, this Panorama row that we've been talking about. It does feel like that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
And Helen, if I can bring you back in, we mentioned the timing of this. Tell us about the Charter and why that all matters in, for the story.
Well, as Noor was explaining earlier, I think you might have been actually, was explaining the concept of the Charter and the fact that it has to be renewed every so many years. And there is while the BBC is independent of government, it's there are roles for the government within those sort of processes and in overseeing and scrutinising the BBC to some extent. So the fact that the BBC is coming up to one of these Charter renewal moments does mean that there is a lot more scrutiny on its output, on what it does, on what happens. So that will increase the scrutiny on this. I mean, the BBC is scrutinised as well by Parliament. Quite often we see the chair, and we see the Director General called in front of a committee of MPs, the Culture Select Committee, to ask questions. And in fact, that was part of the pressure that's been heaped on the BBC this week, has come from the Culture Committee. They wrote a letter asking for more answers about this, and we're having to respond to that. So we've heard from the chair of that committee this evening, the Conservative MP Caroline Dinenage, who said that Tim Davies' decision to step down was regrettable, but that restoring trust in the corporation must come first. And she said that while the BBC board must now begin what she called the long process of rebuilding the corporation's reputation both at home and abroad after the damage caused by what has become a seemingly constant stream of crises and missteps. She said that the BBC chair, Samir Shah, has responded to that committee by letter. Her committee is going to go away, have a read of that letter and decide what their next steps will be after they meet on Tuesday.